Dato Seri, Dato Professor, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sustainability Talk Series 1, sharing sessions towards enlightening issues related to sustainability organized by UKM-YSD Chair for Sustainability. I am Professor Kamisa, the Trust Leader of Sustainability Literacy. UKM-YSD Chair will be moderating this session. In brief, Sustainability Talk Series is an initiative led by the UKM-YSD Chair for Sustainability. Its prime aim is to educate, discuss, and promote exchange of ideas on current sustainability issues. The objective is to provide the basic foundation and framework by the experts in the subject through well thought out talks, and also create a platform for dialogue, discourses, and discussion via public talks and forums that contributes towards sustainable futures. To date, the chair has successfully organized 5 series of talks starting in June 2021. In addition to this Zoom platform, this talk series can also be followed through UKM-YSD Facebook Live. Today's topic is very significant as climate action is goal 13 of the Sustainable Development Goals. Today, we are witnessing that climate change is affecting every country on every continent. It is disrupting national economies and affecting lives, costing people, communities, and countries dearly today and even more tomorrow. Everywhere, people are experiencing the significant impact of climate change, which include changing weather patterns, rising sea levels, and more extreme weather events. The greenhouse gas emissions from human activities are driving climate change and continue to rise. They are now at the highest level in history of mankind. And definitely without action, the world's average surface temperature is projected to rise and likely to surpass 3 degrees Celsius this century, with some areas of the world expected to warm even more. So how are we going to overcome this problem together? Thus, we are very grateful as we have with us today Yang Berbahagia Dato Seri Dr. Zaini Ujang, the Secretary General, Ministry of Environment and Water Malaysia. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to introduce Yang Berbahagia Dr. Seri Zaini Ujang, who is going to share with us about climate action. How are we going to do it together effectively? Ladies and gentlemen, Yang Berbahagia Dato Seri Dr. Zaini is a professional environmental engineer cum scientist, especially concerning river rehabilitation and environmental sustainability in developing countries. His interest in the field leads him to collaborate with many leading scholars worldwide. He is a fellow of various professional bodies and a visiting professor at the Imperial College London, Sweden, and Tsukuba, Japan. He received the Honorary Doctor of Science from Newcastle University in 2018 and was also the Vice Chancellor of University Technology Malaysia from 2008 to 2013, and later became the Secretary General of 3 ministries since 2013 until now. He was the first recipient of the most prestigious Merdeka Award for his outstanding scholastic achievement in 2009. And as a passionate academician and scientist, he has also registered more than 20 intellectual property rights and published more than 300 technical papers and 40 books. Indeed, Yang Berbahagia Dato Dr. Seri's scholastic achievement and thought leadership in environmental initiative has brought significant benefits to not only to the people of Malaysia, but to the rest of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dato Dr. Seri Dr. Zaini Ujang. Thank you.
Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sejahtera, Profesor Kamisa. I am a bit confused here. This lecture is also followed by a group of students from King Faisal University in Saudi Arabia and a group of people, my colleagues from the UK. So I would like to deliver this lecture probably by using English, and then probably I will mention a bit some ideas, some concepts in Malay. I noticed that RTM is also following us, and Astro Awani. So I hope that they can benefit, the viewers can benefit from this. Okay, when I was invited to speak, so I was thinking what best I can share with everyone. So I have chosen to talk about climate action because in the past, we have been talking about climate debates, climate change in terms of technical data, the accuracy of the forecasting, modeling and whatnot. So allow me today to share with you my thought and my exposure that I've gone through in relation to climate action. What can we do together? So this is, I think, more relevant and more beneficial and productive for us to discuss about. So you can refer to some of my books. Professor Kamisah mentioned about 40 books I've written. Actually, Professor Kamisah, ini buku terbaru baru keluar nih. Buku ni dihantar kepada saya kira-kira 15 minit yang lepas. Ini buku saya yang bawah tu, buku yang ke-46. Ya. Yang air dan pembentungan di Malaysia. Itu buku nombor 46. Ada buku sebelum tu, ada buku edisi kedua 40 hadis pelestarian alam sekitar. Edisi pertama buku yang ke-40, edisi yang kedua buku yang 45. So alhamdulillah Allah has given me an opportunity for me to write and to explore various opportunities in order to share knowledge and experience with my colleagues. So today, I'm going to talk about climate discourse. What actually people discuss when they talk about climate and from what angle. And I'm going to direct that to COP26 that I've attended in Glasgow recently and try to focus on what can we do together in terms of climate action. Climate action is not only limited to aims number 13 in SDG, but it's more than that. When you talk about climate change, overall, climate action is the issue. Because when we attended COP26, for example, so we were told that the whole framework is about action of inaction. Orang hanya bercakap aja, tak ada benda yang berlaku on the ground to that level of cynicism that I think we should correct. And finally, I'm going to talk about walk the talk. Yeah. So what can we do together? So most of what I'm going to discuss today is already documented in the books. So please go to the book if you have issues to get the book. So you can email me. I can assist you on that. So, okay. We are now in the midst of COVID-19. Comparing COVID-19 with climate change, it will be more serious, probably 3 times, 4 times more severe. And finally, when climate change occurred, the first thing will occur will be biodiversity collapse. So we will discuss about that. So don't be too engrossed with COVID-19. COVID-19 is asking us, I mean, it is a motivation for us to think about ourselves, about our environment, about our surrounding, cleanliness and whatnot. And finally, there are more issues for us to deal with in the near future, particularly climate change. So I want to start with this very important. If you go to my Facebook, this is a banner in my Facebook. It is a quotation from Sonda Rimes, and says that in a world of unlimited voices on choices, those who can bring people together and tell a good story have power. So there are 3 phrases there. First, unlimited voices. So in this case, there are a lot of people talking about climate, and this is what we are talking about today, climate discourse. So it's a lot of issues, a lot of ideas, a lot of frameworks and whatnot. And on top of that, if we can bring people together, this is what we call climate action. And if we can tell a good story later, and this is what climate resilience is all about. So today we want to start with climate discourse. I will summarize what people have been talking about for the past probably about 30 years, and then climate action, and finally climate resilience. So we notice simplification of the impact of climate change. Say, for example, by increasing 0.8 degrees Celsius, it will increase heat waves. It's occurred now, it's 1.1 degrees Celsius already since Industrial Revolution. Ocean warming, Arctic ice cap melting. This is what's occurring now. Extreme weather events increase. I mean, recently we had very extreme flooding episode in Malaysia, or flooding events in Malaysia. Increased earthquake, not only in places where earthquakes common, but also where earthquakes never happen. Prior to 2015, there was no trace of earthquake that impacting people at large in Sabah in particular. And then now we can see that it is common. Every month occurred at least one. Yeah, so this is something that we can relate to climate change. By 1 degree Celsius, we can see coral reefs destroyed, island nations will be in danger, underwater and whatnot. So I don't want to talk about it because we know about it. I'm going to talk about what discourse framework available that people are talking about at the moment. And this is another climate change projection for Malaysia that we have submitted through biennial update report in 2018 to United Nations framework on climate change. Yeah, so say for example, annual temperature will be increased by 2050. Sabah, say for example, will increase up to 1.4 degrees Celsius. Semenanjung will be 1.6 degrees Celsius. Look at the rainfall. In Sarawak, the increase in rainfall will be up to 5%. Yeah, and in Semenanjung will be from 7 to 11%. So this is part of climate change as predicted. And we are not yet 2050. We are now in 2022. And we can see sea level rise. The most severe will be in Sabah, up to 620 mm rise by 2050. This is based on the projection. If we will not able to reverse the trend of global warming at the moment. So what we can do, there are two ways to do it. One is mitigation action, and the other one is adaptation action. Many people, when they talk about climate change or climate action, it is focusing on mitigation, which is not true. We have a lot to do with adaptation. I'm going to discuss later what to do with climate adaptation in Malaysia. There are two ways, one on the policy and overall framework for Malaysia, the other one on water related. Say, for example, in mitigation actions, we have renewable energy and energy efficiency, transportation, recycling, and the rest. So if I want to put it clearly, you can see this building climate resilience require both mitigation and adaptation to be overlapped. So on top of what we do separately for mitigation, we must find more projects, more activities, more actions related that can serve both mitigation as well as adaptation. So what is mitigation? It's action to reduce emissions that cause climate change. What is adaptation? Action to manage the risk of the climate change impacts. So say, for example, disaster management and business community, flood protection, infrastructure upgrades. Recently, in Parliament, Minister Tuan Ibrahim Tuan Man has indicated that we are going to increase our average recurrence interval for water infrastructure from 100 years to 200 years. So this is to ensure that we are not, we are safe during flooding season. So my focus will be in between. Yeah, so we have to talk about water conservation. We have to talk about new energy systems. We have to talk about local food. We have to talk about education. We have to talk about complete communities, and we have to talk about urban forests. So this is capturing both mitigation and adaptation. If people ask me what to do, if they have little money to spend to fund projects under climate change, I would say that go for water conservation, go for urban forests. That is more meaningful compared to, say, for example, you want to change the entire sustainable, the entire transportation sector, yeah, or to have clean energy in a bigger scale. We have to do it, but I think it will only concentrating on the mitigation aspect, not adaptation. So, okay, let's go to climate discourse. Climate change threatens our existence. So when a professor discusses about climate change from philosophical perspective, I'm so sorry, Professor Azizan, I'm also try to be a bit philosophical, but people will sleep, yeah? And this professor realized that his audience were not able to concentrate, and then he changed. He put climate change threatens our economy, and everyone wake up. Everyone realized this is important subject. So I'm not sure which one is more important for us to discuss, whether the philosophy, the existence of human being in the world is more important in terms of discourse, or we talk about the dollars and cents. But if you be in that situation, I think you can understand that. Therefore, there is an article very interesting about types of people or types of discourse available in climate change. The first one is whataboutism, they call it. Whataboutism is someone will talk about our carbon footprint is trivial, therefore it makes no sense for us to take action, at least until someone does so, until China does the same thing, until America does the same thing, until other people or our neighbors do the same thing, and then we will follow suit. So this is the person that knows everything, but they don't want to do anything. Yeah, so in philosophical terms, we call this group whataboutism. What about? They know everything except action. The second one is individualism. That gives a lot of emphasis on human being individually to take action. They will condemn government as irrelevant. Government is not important. What is more important is individual actions. So that is what we call individualism. The other one is the free rider. Free rider, they don't care. They don't care. Others have no real intention of reducing theirs and will take advantage of that. So they say that, okay, since others are not doing it, I'm not doing it as well. So this is something that people call the free rider. The other one is technological optimism. So someone said that, oh, if we can do this, if we can do carbon capture and storage, we solve the problem. If we can change everything into green energy, everything will be solved. So that is technological optimism. The question is, who is going to pay for the innovation and how to start? How to undo the existing system? So the other one is action of no actionism. We have approved an ambitious target and have declared a climate emergency. That's all. Just a declaration of intention without concrete action. So this is quite common to everyone. The other one is fossil fuel solutionism, because I'm going to talk about energy afterwards. More than 70% of our greenhouse emission generated from energy sector. in Malaysia, close to 80%. So someone said that if we can improve fossil fuel efficiency in terms of efficiency, less use fuel and whatnot, or we can capture the carbon and store them properly, it will solve the problem. And the other one is what we call no stick, no carrots. No stick, just carrots. It means that, okay, they provide a lot of incentive of buying electric car, solar panel and whatnot, but there is no stick, only carrots. The other one, appeal to social justice. So I just want to show the dynamism in discussing this. When we were in COP26, say for example, there are people who came to the podium and discuss about social justice. We are poor people, we have been denied everything, and when we want to grow, we want to develop our country, there are a lot of obstacles. Companies cannot invest in our country because they are fossil fuel-based industries, say for example. So big group. The other one, this is very interesting. Most academics are policy perfectionists. So they read and they have a lot of documents to show that there are a perfect way to do this. And I don't know what the perfect way, but they have all the solution. And the other groups they call appeal to well-being. I have to be very quick. The other one is doomism. Dia kata tak boleh buat apa dah. Since we cannot do anything, tak apalah sampai kiamat lah kita macam ni. Kalau lah temperature rise up to, say for example, 5 degrees C or 6 degrees C, it could be the end of the world. That is the day of the judgment going to be. Or the other one is change is impossible. Yeah. So if you look into that, the discourse can be divided into 4. One is what they call someone else should take action first, redirect responsibility. The other one, disruptive change is not necessary, push non-transformative solutions. Say, for example, technological optimism, all talk, little action, fossil fuel solutionism, no stick, just carrots. The third group is called change will be disruptive, emphasize the downsides. Yeah, so policy perfectionism, appeal to well-being, appeal to social justice, and finally, it is not possible to mitigate climate change. We have to surrender. So these are what, if you can group people together when they discuss about climate change. I tend to agree with almost all of them. And I would say that this is clearly indicated if you attend COP26. This is an example, a study done by a colleague from European country. They did research on policy on climate change in India, and looking at what kind of discourse and politics in India. So you can see that first, they take an approach of third world discourse. Indians, for example, are very fond on that. They are very vocal on that, primacy of economic growth. But there is also when we discuss, for example, primacy of economic growth, but social equity and ecological balance need to be also looked at. So you can read this from GeoForum, an article, very interesting article. It's not latest article, if I'm not mistaken. This article was published in 2018. You look at climate policy at the international scale. From Indian perspective, protecting India's space for growth, principles of common but differentiated responsibilities, and per capita emission level. So many countries from developing world, they are looking at per capita because they are big in number of population. If you look into per country, they look big in terms of emission. When we look at per capita, they are minute compared to, say, for example, countries like United States, Australia, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and whatnot. If we look into the win-win discourse, proactive climate diplomacy in pursuit of India's international interest emission intensity targets. So this is what's happening in the world, and then this is also important for us to frame everything so that at least we know what people are talking about. So most people are what I classify as generalized concern. They have climate change in their mind. It is very important. Not exactly sure why and what to do about it. Much blame lies in the system, but we will be all right if action is taken by someone. The other group is very much into, say, for example, governance focus, and the other one is adaptive optimism, as well as governance focused vexation, means that they are worried that government cannot do it. So therefore, I think we have to understand this, and you will be able to know who they are. That's number one, and how can bring the agenda forward. So the interest is how to make a common understanding on climate action to be. Otherwise, they say that, oh, I don't want to do that. This is not my business. This is the business of the country. This business of the government. And I don't believe this government, say, for example. So there is no solution to it. So, which is very important for us to understand. There is a study done by Dr. Joanna Boynhet, so I don't know how to pronounce her name correctly, but I like the way she framed the whole thing. She put it in this way: sustainable development is good, it can slow down climate change. At the same time, will also slow down oil depletion in terms of social learning. In terms of crisis-oriented, it will be beneficial. So sustainable development framework is there. But there is also green capitalism, which is big now. So in the past, probably the capitalists, they realized that in order to stay with capitalism, they have to reframe themselves, reform themselves to become green capitalism. They are not interested in environment, but they know the money is there. Yeah, they are not interested on reducing carbon emission, blah, blah, blah. That is not their main concern. The main concern is how to get money, how to get business out of it. Yeah, there are also disaster capitalism. The more disaster you have, the more projects will be available. And that project during disaster period is very lucrative because people want immediate solution. And we have also what we call as ecological transition. So this is more meaningful compared to sustainable development, where you have social learning. At the same time, you have slowing down climate change. I'm going to talk about United Nations Climate Change Conference in Glasgow that I attended as head of delegation. So this is our part of our team, 24 of them, taking part in negotiation on a few items that mentioned from time to time. Yeah. So the main negotiation during COP26 in relation to Paris Agreement is to reduce greenhouse gases emission. So I'm going to talk about greenhouse gases later, and what is the difference between GHG compared to, say, for example, carbon emissions, say, for example, and how to increase GHG offsetting capability. You can see that both of them are mitigation. Both of the negotiation that taken place in the previous COP were mainly concentrated on mitigation action. And during this COP26, they have started talking about mitigation, which is very interesting. Yeah. The principle, as mentioned earlier, is common but differentiated responsibilities with respective capabilities. And there are two types of countries. One is Annex 1 countries. These are 42 or 46 countries in the block of developed nations They are responsible for funding, technology, and expertise. And the other one is non-Annex 1, including Malaysia. We are to be supported by Annex 1 country, because this is what Paris Agreement is all about. People say that why should we wait for the funding and assistance expertise from developed nations? Because this is part of Paris Agreement. You can say that you don't want it, but as far as Paris Agreement is concerned, it's there. Yeah. So the minister speech, I think was well received in terms of content, is to update our nationally determined contribution. What is NDC? It's our commitment. Nationally determined contribution, they call it, with 45% GHG reductions, minimum 50% forest cover. At the moment, we have 55.6. Zero waste to disposal landfill, carbon market Q3 2022, and net zero GHG emission by 2050. Government's fleet will be provided with new engines, new machine with no diesel and petrol, and ESG policy for listed corporations. So these are main items in the speech of the minister. You can see that the press release, you can read that later, but this is made commonly available. So let's go back to the framework, climate change ecosystem, before we understand what to do. What is climate change all about? What is climate action all about? The first thing, in order to have environmental sustainability, the major currency is carbon, or we can call it GHG later, but take it carbon first. Yeah, so if you talk about particulate matter 2.5 for air pollution, or you think about NOx, SOx, these are fractions, and this cannot be a major currency for environmental sustainability. But if we talk about carbon, it can also related to air pollution, air in terms of gas emission, water, wastewater emission, industrial discharges, and whatnot, all covered under carbon. Yeah, and we are no longer focusing on localized pollution loading. When you talk about climate change, it is global. Whatever you produce, carbon emitted in Africa, in Malaysia, or everywhere, it will affect people in other parts of the world, including places where they have not been able to enjoy the so-called modern technology that requires a lot of energy and fossil fuel to be burned. What is the strategic approach? Is to reduce carbon emission. It could be up to net zero, as we mentioned. And the second one is how to increase carbon sink. And then the methodology is green technology and green cover. Green cover is not limited. What is green technology? It covers carbon capture and storage, green energy, such as solar panel that we common in Malaysia, and other things. Yeah, electric car, hydrogen car, or vehicles. Green cover includes forests, urban forests, wetlands, and the rest. Yeah, so this is very important. And how to do it? How can we together act upon it? What is climate change, or what is climate action? So it can be through our lifestyle or through what we call a circular economy. So I'm going to talk about this. The main focus is the solutions, systemic solution. So the issue with systemic pollution, systemic solutions is circularity culture that we have to inculcate. And the main issue on methodology is climate financing. So let's look into these numbers. Prior to 2021 COP26, we had our NDC, Nationally Determined Contribution. And according to international Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. These are agencies closely associated with United Nations UNFCCC Framework Convention on Climate Change. They compile studies that people have done. They are not doing studies. They commission people. They work together. People doing the studies, and they finalize this. They capture all the studies and they generalize the studies. So according to NDC, prior to 2021 or COP26 in Glasgow, the NDC, or the promises, the commitment of all countries were not sufficient. Say, for example, the temperature is expected to rise up to 2.6 degrees Celsius or 2.7 degrees Celsius based on the simulation, based on modeling. Yeah. And with new commitments, prior to that, we were asked to come up with more ambitious NDC. Malaysia, say for example, on the 31st of July 2021, submitted our new NDC or revised NDC, and other countries doing the same. So it's still not meeting the target 1.5 degrees Celsius. So 2.4. So there's a lot of people pressure to make sure that we are not able to do it. So only by net zero promises prior to 2030 commitment, temperature will be kept at 1.8 degrees Celsius. There was a study done. Some people said that if we exceeding 2 degrees Celsius, it will be irreversible. You cannot reduce, you cannot cool down the temperature. Yeah, so this is very important. Therefore, we kept at 1.8. And in order to do that, in order to have 1.5 degrees Celsius, we have to reduce our emission. Pledges before COP26, we are still producing 52.8 gigaton. Yeah, and then if we follow the pledges during COP26, we produce 41.9 gigatons. And this is very important because what we need to do, we have to reduce up to, the allowable GHG to be emitted so that temperature will not rise more than what is expected is only 26.6 gigatons by 2030. Yeah, so this is very important policy. So we know that these are the solution. Phase out coal plants, where people say that Malaysia has already indicated by 2044, coal plant will be out from energy mix in Malaysia. Invest in clean energy and efficiency, this is what we are doing. Retrofit buildings, it is not that common in Malaysia. We still use old technology. We still use air conditioning in Malaysia largely because we designed our house to capture heat and then decarbonize, shift to electric vehicles or hydrogen vehicles, increase public transport, decarbonize aviation and shopping and shipping, all deforestation and restore degraded lands, reduce food loss and waste. Number 9, reduce food loss and waste. At the moment in Malaysia, we are wasting 40% of our food. In order to provide food to our table, we have to import some of the materials. In order to import, we have to have transportation using a lot of fossil fuel in order to arrive at our table, and then 40% wasted. So this, therefore, number 9 is very important. Eat more plants and less meat. It means that this is something important. So personally, what we can do, this is to be discussed. I think if, say for example, if we drop the car, which I'm not doing yet, we can reduce 2.4 tons of CO2 equivalent per year, yeah, individually. So it means that we we use public transportation. We try to walk and to cycle as much. So by doing that, this is possible. Compared to, say, for example, if we change our light bulbs to LED, it's only 0.1 ton CO2 equivalent per year. Yeah, so this is very little. So when we talk about climate actions, this is what we have to do. This is what we must do individually, and we have to do it in a cohesive manner so that everyone will be on board and will reduce significantly. I tend to agree with this generalization. This is overall in the world, but in Malaysia, it's more than 73% energy that generated greenhouse gases. Overall in the world is 73. And then we have also agriculture and forestry and land use, waste and industry. If we look into countries with less per capita, you put per capita, so this is what developing nations like to discuss because they would like per capita. Qatar is the highest, 32.4 ton CO2 per year. Yeah. Kuwait, this is oil-rich country. They emit a lot. UAE, Bahrain, Canada, Australia, Luxembourg, Saudi Arabia. Malaysia is about 7.7. This is based on 2018 data. Compared to countries like Japan, 8.7, Germany, Netherlands. But if you look into this, you will find that more prosperous countries with high sustainability index, such as France, Sweden, Denmark, say for example, they have less than 6 or less than 5 ton per capita. Yeah, but countries like Uganda, Rwanda, Chad, and Somalia, they are poor countries. They don't have electricity as what we enjoy in Malaysia, so they don't have as many cars available per family. So if you look into that, look at why United Kingdom is less in terms of per capita CO2 equivalent emission. Number one, because they rely so much on nuclear as a source of energy. The base load of the electricity is nuclear. Yeah, in France, for example, it's about 74% of the electricity is from nuclear. Countries like Spain, for example, they have wind, they have photovoltaic, they have also nuclear, which is it's not as significant, but it's available. In terms of energy security, Spain is better than France because they try to be as diverse as possible. And this is something that I would like to share with everyone. When we talk about carbon emission and whatnot, so we can have an opportunity to trade carbon if you are exceeding certain limits. And some countries, especially countries belong to the like-minded developing countries. These are the typical, these are, sorry, someone is disturbing me. These are groupings that negotiating in COP, yeah, 26 and prior to that. Net zero is the great escape of developed nations. We refuse carbon colonialism. Yeah, so this is another terminology that I learned at COP. So let's finalize my discussion with action, climate action. The first thing we have to understand that most countries have climate action in place in their documents, in their planning already. 125 of 152 developing countries are formulating and implementing national climate adaptation plans, yeah, including Malaysia. We know that, and focus is given to areas like food security and production. Why food security and production is the most important? Because in the future, when the photo that I shared earlier, after COVID-19, we have recession now. Many countries are in very bad shape of recession. And then we have climate change, and then we have biodiversity collapse. And during that time, it's difficult to grow anything, especially food. So many countries now are preparing themselves. Singapore, say for example, they want to export food now from Singapore. They want to export fish, and they want to export vegetables. And you know that if you do it properly, you can have the upmarket segment of this business. And also wetland ecosystem, freshwater resources, which is important, health, human health, and key economic sector and services. So these are the highest priority in that. Before I end, I would like to share with you the situation that we are now. 2016 that we submitted this report in 2020 as Annex 1 and non-Annex 1 countries. We are reporting X-4. It means that our reporting in 2020 for 2016. So this year we are doing for 2018. Yeah. So you can see that from energy, including transportation, we are decreasing from 253 million ton equivalent, CO2 equivalent to 255. However, it is 79% of the total GHG emission in Malaysia. So this is very important for us to understand. The other one is land use and land use change and forestry, or LULUCF we call it, that emitted and GHG when we have our new township, new railway tracks, new highways and whatnot. So that contributed a lot. So you can see that from 3.32 became 17.8. And because of that, our capacity to offset GHG through LULUCF removal reduced from -267 to -259. So overall, per capita, the country, we have positive 75 million tons CO2 equivalent. If you look into that, it's like this. The upper part is mainly emission. The lower part is offsetting or absorption of GHG. Yeah. So the red color is mainly the net. So we had net zero many times, 2004, and prior to that we were net negative. So in order to have net zero, we can, net zero equals to A plus B equal to 0, yeah? So you can reduce A or you can increase B. If we have net negative, we can sell the exceeding carbon offsetting that we have. So this is what we call carbon market, going to be in place by Q3 2022 in Malaysia. So if you ask me what I'm doing, what we are doing in the ministry this year and last year, so we are busy with this. We have done our Malaysia Climate Change Council the first time, second time last year. Completion our updated NDC to United Nations Framework Climate Change, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. We have done our low carbon cities blueprint, low carbon mobility blueprint, developing carbon market mechanisms so that we know how to trade. And people ask why it is too late, because it was finalized in COP26 on carbon market mechanisms, yeah? Article 6.2 and 6.4. Review of climate change policy is not yet finalized. We're going to finalize that at least in Q1 this year. Development of climate change legal framework, establishment of greenhouse gas inventory center. This is crucial. We are going to do it in Q1 this year. Preparation of Malaysia fourth national communication, BUR4 for Malaysia is going to be completed this year, inshallah. And the most important study is the long-term low emission development strategy, LEDS towards 2050. And other than that, national adaptation plan, carbon market, climate change bill, and Climate Change Adaptation Bill. What is the difference? Adaptation Bill is about infra work related to largely on water infrastructure. So this is what we are trying to finalize in 2022. I would like to comment on the carbon emission, as I mentioned. You see that our second submission on nationally determined contribution, the revised edition on 30th of July 2021, we would like to reduce economy-wide carbon intensity. Yeah, in some countries, they said that they want to reduce their energy sector by certain percentage, but in Malaysia, economy-wide means everything from all sectors, yeah, compared to 2005 level. So that 45% of carbon intensity reductions is unconditional, and it is an increase by 10% compared to the previous NDC we had. What is also important, when you talk about GHG, it's not only carbon dioxide. It is also methane, nitrous oxide, hydrofluorocarbon, chlorofluorocarbon, sulfur hexafluoride, and nitrogen trifluoride. Out of 7, initially only 3, only 4 can be considered as carbon substances or organic substances. Yeah, the rest are non-organic. So there is no carbon elements in the rest 3. So it is actually a misnomer to call carbon emission. If you call carbon emission, it's only carbon dioxide, methane, and hydrofluorocarbon or perfluorocarbons. When you talk about CO2 equivalent, that's correct. Yeah, but the most appropriate, I think, is GHG emission. Why? Because you can see that carbon dioxide, in terms of global warming potential, a given time horizon of 20 years, will remain as 1. Unlike methane, it will 72. Over 500 years, it became 7.6. But tetrafluoromethane, for example, it is 5,210 more potent in terms of global warming potential compared to CO2. Yeah. Therefore, countries like United States, they don't want to control CO2. They will emphasize on controlling methane. Malaysia took part in the pledge led by United States recently at COP26 on methane reduction by 2030. Yeah, so that's good for us. I don't want to go too detail, but before we end, this is what I normally talk about. We can have planning, strategy, implementation, and improvement. We can have a set of outcomes. It is largely organizational domain. Our climate action will be considered as environment and described in environmental policy. Sometimes it will not be able to hit people in terms of habitual and behavioral, what else culture we want to talk about. Yeah. So because it is personal domain, in order to do that, we have to get public participation in a positive way. It's not public participation in the context of what I mentioned in climate discourse earlier. And in order to do that, we have to have a set of ecological philosophy. So this is important. Professor Azizan is very well versed in this. She has written books on it. But according to what I understood, if we have Islamic ecosophy, we can make it as our part of our lifestyle, part of our ibadah, part of our day of doing things. Instead of talking about doing things, we do it because it is halal and it is tayyib. Yeah. So compared to Western civilizations, for example, Western ecosophy, they talk about carbon footprint. If I were to explain carbon footprint, I've been talking about it for the past 20 years. Not many people can understand the concept of carbon because it is a bit difficult to understand if you are not a student of science. Yeah, so you have to understand carbon. I give lecture, including in masjid, in madrasa, about carbon footprint, and in the book that we have written on 40 hadis pelestarian alam sekitar, we try to simplify the whole thing. But it is difficult compared to, say, for example, it is halal and tayyib. Sugar is halal. Excessive of sugar is not tayyib, it's not good. Fossil fuel is halal. Excessive of fossil fuel emission is not tayyib. So that's easier for people to understand on the ground. And instead of talking about sustainable development, or now people are talking about green transformation, we talk about Khalifah. We talk about green lifestyle, we talk about ihsan, because whatever we do in life, sometimes no one can regulate, because you are alone at home, switching on your air conditioning or using excessive water for wudu. But if you know that this is ihsan, God realize, God sees what you are doing, so it's different. And it must be related to value driven, yes, but if you see that it is taqwa, it's more powerful. Yeah, and the whole thing is part of holistic lifestyle or ibadah from Muslim perspective. Whereas we talk about environmental policy, it is limited to performance-based for organizational domain, such as what is your KPI, what is your budget spending, what is your rating, what is your index. This is what we are doing at the ministry. So sometimes we realize that we are not hitting people on the ground. Why? Because we are talking different language. We are talking about KPIs, budget spending, rating, instead of true understanding on how to become a green person or a person that's concerned about environment. So I would like to end my presentation by 7 commandments. I'm not sure why I put it 7 commandments, but I think this is what I've said in my presentation. We need to change to use green energy or opt for energy efficiency. So if we cannot have solar panel at home, I'm using solar panel at home. It is 4 kilowatt system, which is I invested about in 2016. At least I managed to get a discount by 400 ringgit a month from the solar panel that I installed. If you do it bigger, it is good. But at the same time, we can use energy efficiency, use less energy. Less energy means less fossil fuel to be incinerated, to be burned, and less GHG to be emitted. Reduce water consumption. People say, what's wrong with water consumption? I paid my bills, water bill. Yes. The more water you use, the more electricity that you require, because to get the water to your house, you require a lot of pumping. As far as the expenses is concerned, 40% of the water industry is, in terms of expenses, is for electricity. Yeah, so the less water we use, less carbon emission as a result. Cycling and walking for short destination, going to Musalla, going to UKM. If you are staying in Bangi, try to cycle to UKM campus. This is doable. 15-minute cycling is good for everyone. Yeah. You don't have to be a member of health club that you have to pay handsome money. Reduce, reuse, reclaim, use material, product and services. Keep your neighborhood clean and green, and buy and sell climate products and services. So finally, I would like everyone to ensure that our politicians are concerned about climate change, concerned about environment, concerned about what is happening in the world at the moment. So let's vote for climate action. With that, I thank everyone. I have taken 15 minutes more than what expected. Sekian, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ya, terima kasih, Prof.
Thank you very much, Yang Berbahagia Dato Seri, for enlightening us here on climate discourse, actions that need to be prioritized, and how we as a nation can do it together. And from the presentation, Dato Seri also remind us on the importance of ecological philosophy, in addition to environmental policy. Now, based on the presentation, as we could see, in tackling the environmental issues, we need to capture both the mitigations as well as adaptation actions. There are a few areas that need to be prioritized: water conservation, new energy system, local food, complete communities, urban forests, and more importantly, through education. Now, in achieving environmental sustainability, we must also make sure an alignment. I could see in terms of strategic approach in reducing carbon emission, adaptation approach, its methodology, which is green technology, and systemic solution such as a green and low carbon lifestyle. Now, there are also, Dato Seri has also shared with us, or there are already numerous and concerted effort initiated by the government under the key climate change task 2021 and 2022, such as through Malaysian Climate Change Council, National Low Carbon Cities, so on and so forth. But the questions remain the same. What can we, as Malaysian citizens, collectively do in order to reduce this carbon emission and fulfill our role as in gearing towards what has been discussed by Dato just now. Perhaps we can use the 7 commandments shared by by Dato Seri as a starting point for us to enculture this low carbon lifestyle, the one that have been discussed throughout Dato Seri sharing just now. Okay, now we're coming to the Q&A session. Maybe I will first, Dato, I will first read questions from the audience. Maybe the first questions is from, I will be sharing questions from Nur Zahida from UKM. She's one of our postgraduate students. She was asking what small things that we can do. This is very important questions. What small things that we can do to overcome such these issues, which together can bring a huge advantage to the environment. Meaning that she was asking about, what small things can individual do in order to tackle this problem.
This is what I'm putting these 7 commandments. Energy efficiency is very simple. Instead of switching, say for example, in my office, I have, if I'm mistaken, about 10 lights. I can switch on 10 lights, 10 bulbs. I only switch 1 or 2 on daily basis, and I open my that's example. That's very easy. So instead of using 10, you use only 2, or the best is if you use only 1. The other one is to reduce water consumption. I discussed this in 40 hadis plus dalam kita. Instead of using 10 liter of water for wudu, we can use 1 liter. And Nabi SAW used only 700 milliliter, 0.7 liter. So this is an example, simple thing. Itu hadis yang 0.7 tu berdasarkan kepada satu hadis sahih. Simple, but you can do it. Then people ask, why you ask? I mean, Malaysia is rich with water. Why should we use that? As I mentioned earlier, the water comes to you through energy, and by using less water means that less energy we are using for that matter. And simple things, cycling and walking to short destination. Say for example, surau kat rumah saya ni 600 meter. A year, probably last year, I cycle almost every time, or I walk almost every time to surau, and probably less than 5 times I drive during rainy season, during rainy days. Some people, because they have good cars, dia kata pakailah kereta yang ada. Tetapi pada masa sama kita mesti ingat bahawa bila kita menggunakan kereta pada short distances ni, short destination, kita punya gear tu gear yang rendah. Itulah gear yang paling banyak sekali pembakaran fossil fuel. So why not you walk, and it is good for us because make us healthier, insyaAllah. And yang lain-lain tu reduce, reuse, reclaim materials ni macam-macam lah. Kalau boleh jangan simply buang. Memang kita ada policy on single-use plastic. We want to ban single-use plastic by 2030. Tapi nak sampai 2030 tu kita nak buat apa? Ya, sebab I mean we discussed with manufacturers. They said that they bought this for millions of ringgit investment and they only capture the break even by 2027 and whatnot. So we accommodate that. So macam mana kan orang dah tak nak buat benda tu. Dan slowly we are encouraging people, give more incentive for people to use reuse single-use plastics. And if possible, single-use plastic is to be a commodity that we can trade. Say for example, in Malaysia, we are importing a lot of used plastic. It's supposed to be maximum of 300 tons, but we exported more last year, more than 500 tons. Yeah, why we do it? Because our plastic industry require some kind of used plastic for in order to enter certain market. So why not we get this plastic, scrap plastic from locally? Why should we import this, for example? So ini akan hanya berlaku kalau kita selalu reduce, reuse, and reclaim our used materials. Cakap senang lah, tapi nak buat susah. If I were to, some students ask me question. As a student, they want to graduate, they want to become a green entrepreneur. What best they can do? I said that collect single-use plastic and put back into the system. Kita jadi balik macam circular economy. As I mentioned, circularity, culture must be there. Yeah, in our country. And many places in the world are doing the same. Keep your neighborhood clean and green. Why we discovered a lot of issues related to cleanliness in neighborhood that contribute to, say, for example, flash floods, mosquito breedings, and some places it's not clean, it's not palatable. As a result, the property market reduced significantly. Kalau kawasan tu cantik, setiap orang ambil tanggungjawab jaga kawasan masing-masing, kawasan tu akan berseri-seri. Property market akan tinggi lah. Harga rumah sepatutnya 500,000 jadi 600,000, 700,000 because of that. Yeah, so this is simple thing. Apa yang saya sebutkan ni semuanya simple. Ni for individual participants today to contemplate on it and then try to do it. But this is largely discussed in my books, 40 Hadis Pelestarian Alam Sekitar dan Eco Shift. Ada dua buku tu memang banyak cerita tentang benda ni. Prof?
Okay, thank you, Dato. We have another questions from Shamimi from UCSI University. Her question is, can Dato share of current high-tech 5G tools and its future implication towards nature and disaster? She was asking about 5G. Yeah.
I'm not sure about that. Can I pass the question?
Okay. Another questions for insurance and investment from Mrs. Tan. Yeah, she's from YBhg. For insurance and investment to contribute to climate change solution, what are the gaps currently, and should we close it? How could we work better with government and other organizations rather than silo initiative like green investment, etc.?
So we have, as I mentioned earlier, embark on ESG, environment, sustainability, and governance. In big corporation, in particular listed in Kuala Lumpur Exchange, it's already mandated that they have to be concerned about sustainability. So the aspect of sustainability, number one, we must promote, say for example, what they call as net carbon investment, net zero carbon investment. If we want to invest in energy sector, the project must be not producing more GHG to the atmosphere. Yeah, so it will be okay if you want. They can try, but it's very difficult. The bankability will be lower, and what is important, I think the risk will be higher. So they have to pay more in order to get funding from financial institution. At the same time, insurance companies found it very difficult to fund this kind of project because it's very high risk. In the future, whatever products and services that we serve or we produce, it will be attached with carbon emitted from that particular product. Sekarang ni kita beli apa-apa saja dia ada berapakah komponen, certain komponen lah. Contohnya what is the chemicals ingredients dalam tu. Sebahagian tu berapa kalori makanan yang kita ambil. But in the future they will put what is the carbon emitted or CO2 equivalent emitted by having that. Ya, contohnya kita beli air lah, daripada air tu dibagi tahu untuk menghasilkan air ni kita memerlukan 0.1 kilogram of carbon emitted. Jadi orang tahu nak hilangkan benda tu, itu yang perlukan carbon trading tadi tu, yang kena ada pasaran karbon. So pasaran karbon ni insya-Allah kita akan bekerjasama dengan Kementerian Keuangan dan Bursa Malaysia, dan insya-Allah kita akan mulakan voluntary carbon market ini pada Q3 2022 ni. Maknanya kalaulah kita ekspor apa saja barangan ke luar negeri, kita boleh bagi tahu carbon is already net zero. So ini sangat penting sebab saya akan bagi satu lagi ucapan di UCSI, saya tak tahu bila tarikhnya, cerita tentang aspek ini, ya. What's going to be the future climate ecosystem going to be. Bukan hanya cerita tentang pelepasan karbon dan sebagainya. Lebih daripada itu, kita akan ada attachment kepada setiap barangan yang kita beli. Katalah kita beli telefon. Telefon ini dia tak pastikan dia akan net zero, dia akan tulis ini net zero. Ya, jadi orang yang akan beli telefon ni, dia tahu bahawa bila dia beli net zero, dia rasa dia membantu melestarikan alam sekitar. Assuming syarikat saya beli 100 telefon ni dan syarikat saya nak jadi net zero. Apabila kita beli barangan yang bukan net zero, you have to add on non net zero tu dalam kita punya calculation of carbon emission tadi. So kita tak akan jadi net zero kalau kita membeli barangan bukan net zero. Ya, so itu yang penting untuk kita faham. Okey.
Okey, boleh satu lagi soalan, Datuk?
Ya, satu lagi.
Daripada saudara Hazri dalam ruangan chat ni, the current extreme event in Shah Alam has severe implication to the community, and many has temporarily affected and displaced, let alone the loss of life. Studies by Nahrim indicates that certain places in Malaysia will be submerged due to rising in terms of the sea level. What is your take on that, and what is the government plan to prevent this from happening?
Okay, Nahrim is part of our ministry lah, ya. Yang data yang saya tunjuk tadi itu adalah data Nahrim. Yang slide saya nombor 4 ke nombor 5 tadi. Therefore, we have to do adaptation. Sebab kita tak boleh kata kita buat untuk Malaysia, kita reducekan carbon untuk Malaysia, tak boleh. Because it is global scenario, global phenomena. So if you cannot mitigate as much as what we would like to be, we have to prepare adaptation plan. So adaptation plan kita tu yang kita sebutkan dalam ucapan dalam parlimen baru-baru ni, dan dalam kenyataan akhbar yang dibuat pelbagai pihak termasuk daripada menteri saya lah, Tuan Ibrahim, kita memerlukan 393 bilion over 50 years untuk adaptasi perubahan iklim dalam sektor air sahaja. So we need a lot of money. It means that in the future kalau kita beli rumah itu kena ditegakkan di atas foundation yang lebih tinggi, longkang yang lebih besar dan harga yang lebih mahal lagi lah. Kalau sekarang ni rumah 300,000, mungkin akan datang tu rumah 400,000 untuk membolehkan kita terselamat daripada hal-hal demikian. Contohnya macam Singapura sekarang dia telah membina benteng tak siap lagi sepenuhnya, akan siap sepenuhnya di Singapura, keliling negara Singapura itu, dan kosnya ialah 100 bilion Sing dollar buat benteng sahaja. Ya, so inilah kos yang terpaksa kita bayar apabila pencemaran ataupun climate change berlaku.
Okay, perhaps maybe we still have 2 or 3 minutes here, Dato Seri. Maybe one important questions from Damien. He was asking, when is Malaysia declaring a climate emergency?
Well, saya tak nak jadi yang macam discourse tadi lah, ya. I mean, we are. I don't want to be as doom as the doomies. Saya nak sebutkan bahawa kita positif, kita buat mana yang boleh, dan ajal maut itu di tangan Tuhan. Bencana pun di tangan Tuhan. Kita buat mana yang terbaik lah. Kalau kebetulan benda itu berlaku dan kita tak boleh buat apa-apa, itulah akhirnya. Ya, jadi kita nak berakhir dengan kegiatan ataupun dengan amalan yang baik. Amalan yang baik itu ialah climate action yang saya sebutkan. Dan ini ada contohnya, benda-benda yang kita boleh buat. Kalau kita nak tanya kenapa orang sana tak buat, kenapa kerajaan tak buat, kenapa itu tak buat, panjang ceritanya. What can I do today? Selepas ini, kalau ambil air semayang, janganlah ambil air semayang 10 liter. Kenapa 10 liter? Bacalah dalam buku yang saya tulis tu, kajian yang kami buatlah pada tahun 1995 ke 94 macam tu. Ya, on average Malaysia menggunakan sehingga 10 liter untuk ambil wuduk. Mandi, orang Malaysia ni mandi sampai 30 liter. Sebab mandi setengah jam, air mencurah, aja menyanyi lagu, macam-macam lagu, nyanyikan 3-4 lagu nyanyikan. Ini pengalaman saya masa tinggal di asrama. Saya jadi fellow asrama lama lah. Dan saya dapati pelajar, especially lepas main bola sepak ke main rugby ke, bila menang tu dia panjang sikit lagunya. Duduk, air mencurah-curah. 30 liter, 40 liter sekali mandi. Ya, dan ini luar daripada kebiasaan dan luar daripada sunnah, of course. Kalau kita tengok sunnah Nabi SAW, Nabi menggunakan 4 ke 5 cupak sahaja air untuk mandi, which is very little. 0.7 liter kali dengan 4. Itulah banyaknya air Nabi gunakan untuk mandi. Bukan kerana tempat itu tak cukup air. Ya. Di Madinah banyak air. Mungkin di Madinah ini sama banyak air kita nak bandingkan dengan Mekah. Tapi disebabkan oleh keperluan kita untuk berjimat cermat. Semakin banyak air kita guna, semakin banyak tenaga yang kita guna, semakin banyak juga wastewater, air sisa kumbahan yang kita hasilkan. Ya, so ini semua memerlukan tenaga untuk dilupuskan. Okay, saya mengucapkan terima kasih kepada semua petang-petang ni. Subject is very heavy.
Ya, ada
fun,
banyak
but
soalan
I hope that everyone can understand. Yeah.
Ya, Datuk, ya, saya harap diharap ya ada banyak soalan dalam Facebook sebenarnya yang berkisar kepada poin yang terakhir ya, yang Datuk kongsikan tadi tentang bagaimana kita sebagai ahli dalam masyarakat ya, khususnya dalam konteks negara kita dapat memainkan peranan dalam memberikan kesedaran berkenaan dengan climate change ini ya dalam ekosistem masyarakat kita. Baiklah ya, on behalf of UKM-YSD Chair for Sustainability and the rest of us today, I would like to express our appreciation to Yang Berbahagia Dato Seri for the time and effort to share your knowledge, experience and enlighten us on these important issues, not only for us but for our future generation who are going to inherit who will be inherited the environment from us. Now, before we end our sessions, we are going to capture this moment by taking a group photo. Therefore, I would like to request everyone to open your camera for the group photo, please. Thank you.
Terima kasih Dato Seri.
Okay, 10 second untuk yang lain buka kamera.
Ada. I'm here.
Habis.
Okay. Okay,
Lama senyap.
Assalamualaikum.
Kita nak makan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi
Warahmatullahi
wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi
Semua.
wabarakatuh. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih dah Datuk.
Terima kasih.
Mohon maaflah atas sebarang kekurangan.
Tak ada. Okey. No issue.
Terima kasih.
Okay, thank you.
Terima kasih Dr. Pia.
Terima kasih Datuk Azizan.
Ya,
Sentiasa
sama-sama.
mendukung.
Terima kasih.
Terus again ya. Okey.
InsyaAllah.
Ya. Okey, thank you. Assalamualaikum. Siapa yang belum makan,
Assalam.
go and makan. Nanti masuk angin. Alright. Okey, Assalamualaikum.
Salam.